Hey, this is Giang Nguyen, and you're listening to the Immi-Wealth Builder podcast, where we celebrate incredible immigrant success stories, share proven strategies, and give you actionable steps to build your wealth, freedom, and a lasting legacy. Let's go get it. Today, we have Susan Noh, an incredible real estate investor and business owner who built her success from the ground up. She's a master at scaling, systemizing, and she has an amazing story about turning challenges into opportunities. Let's dive in.
Hi, Ian. Thanks for having me here. I'm very honored to be one of the podcast guest speaker here. So I came into the US from South Korea back in 2010. That's when I was in high school. When I came here, I went to school in Ambler, and I actually took one grade off to go to better college. Really, the education, higher education, better education was a goal for my family. So I came here with my mom, dad, my little sister, who's almost 10 years younger than me. And, everything was new because we didn't have any families or friends here. We made new friends from church. So it was great. And yeah, that's how we came.
I love that. Okay. So you say you went to school in Ambler, PA. And then how did you transition from school? Did you do a W-2 or did you go straight to entrepreneurship and business ownership life?
So I have a little bit sad story time. When we immigrated in 2010, unfortunately, the next year, my dad got really sick. So he was a very healthy man. He was only like 43. And one day he basically had some pain in the back. And then the next day he was like, he couldn't breathe.
Oh, wow.
I was at church playing in the orchestra. And then one of the deacons, he says, "Hey, come down, Susan. We're going to go see your dad at the hospital." I'm like, "Hospital? What do you mean?" Unfortunately, he got last stage of stomach cancer when we found out. It was spread all over to the lymph nodes and everything. And because he was young, the cancer cells were very aggressive too.
Yeah.
But that was like 8 very intensive months because we were getting evicted from the house that we were living in because there's basically, no income, and then we were not ready to pay for it. And we were paying some of the bills and here and there. Later, I realized I don't have to pay the bills really because the government actually helped people with the life-threatening dangers. But anyhow, we did that. And I became very, very independent. I took care of my little sister. So my school was the Haken High School in Ambler. And then her elementary school, Lower Gwinnett, would be like right down the road. It's walkable distance,
Okay.
like 5 minutes. So my school would be ended like 20 minutes earlier. So I would bring my car to pick her up in the, pickup line.
Wow.
And then she would come out like this little girl, like, "Hey, and then go straight to Appa's hospital." But unfortunately, he passed away after 8 months of being diagnosed. That was my senior year. So I was about around 18. I was very lost. And then I went to college and I had like 5 part-time jobs.
Wow.
I was running around like crazy. I did a lot of different things to just make it work. And later on, I think what happened is that I was working in one of the real estate office, just like part-time, admin. I had no clue about real estate. My husband, now husband, but then was a boyfriend, he walked in and then I was like, why is this guy staring at me, right? Like it was a little weird for me. And just for the context, I'm obviously Asian and he's Colombian. So I was like, this is so weird. But then, he gave me some rides and then we went out to eat. And on I think the first or second week of us starting to date, he asked me, "Susan, I think you have a lot of jobs. Do you want to start real estate investing company with me? Like start working in it?" And that's how I started real estate wholesaling. So having like 5 jobs, running around this little 2001 Honda Odyssey minivan, and then having to move to like completely like self-employed, doing everything yourself was a big change for me.
Susan, first of all, I'm really sorry to hear about your dad's death. That must have been so challenging just from the time of knowing the diagnosis to his pass away. And you guys just came over. So I couldn't imagine the strength, the resilience it took for you to deal with that yourself and also step up and be now the caregiver for your family. That's what a lot of us sometimes have to do, right? To survive and to make ends meet. And I love that funny story that you share about meeting your then boyfriend, now husband. And also even just like your courage of saying like, heck yeah, like at this point, I already work 5 jobs. You know how to hustle. You know that you can do it. So why not real estate wholesale? For listeners who don't know what the real estate wholesaling is, Susan was essentially finding off market properties that would serve as great rentals or flips or just overall investment property. She would find these properties off market direct to sellers. She would solve the seller's problem, which can be anything ranging from they just need to sell quickly or they just owe a lot of mortgage, they just owe a lot of tax. There's a lot of reason, right? When sellers need to sell quickly. And her role is to help the seller out, find this property, and then be able to give it to investors who then can actually pay Susan for her effort and then essentially take that as an investment. So it's great strategy to start out when you don't have a lot of capital. You know you can build rapport, you know system and strategy, and that you know that you can actually solve people problems. So I love that you start with that. And I really think that's an important strategy for a lot of immigrants to know about. You start wholesaling, I'm assuming that give you at least even some capital to start, but also have properties that you can now buy yourself. Tell me a little bit from your transition from real estate wholesaling to then maybe become a real estate investor.
Yeah, so it's been quite a journey. It's been like maybe 10, 11 years now. So I started very early. I met my husband when I was 19. Started really dating with him when I was like 20. But we were very, I guess, hungry for success.
Yeah.
Not necessarily money, but we wanted the freedom. So I think that kind of like chimed together. So with the wholesaling, I learned a lot. And for the context, Andre is 10 years older than me. So he knows a little more, right? He definitely knows a little more. He was a commercial real estate agent before he met me for about 4 or 5 years. So he had some ideas. And whenever I was like, oh, I can't deal with these people because people are so rude over the phone. So how it works is that there are signs and there are marketing materials that says we buy houses. People call that number. And some people are upset about how the marketing materials are distributed, which was not my thing. Like I didn't know how they were getting distributed because we had other people do it, but they weren't upset about it. But most of the people they called to sell the property, but they were still being very rude. Like they're saying I'm cold calling. At the time, mine that I was in the country for like maybe 3, 4 years, still very new. Korean is my first language. I did speak some English before, but still, like, it was just really difficult and not understanding what they're saying. And also, there's heavy accents in Philly. I think at that period of time, I really learned how to like negotiate some sales skills. When people say rude things or cursing at me, then I would understand that they're just, in a distress situation. It's really not about me, right? So I learned a very valuable lesson. I was very scared to pick up the calls and making calls, but right now I'm not. So I'm very glad that I went through that phase. With the wholesaling, what it does is that you get to meet very motivated sellers, like you said. So we very naturally went into creative financing. Specifically for us, it was mortgage assumptions.
Okay.
There's motivated sellers who want to just get rid of the property real quick. But a lot of them were losing from foreclosure because they couldn't pay. And usually the amount was like a couple $1,000s, or, it could go up a little more, but it wasn't a lot of money. So we would come in, assess the situation, how much they need to move out, how much do they want for the property, and how much money it's needed to stop the foreclosure. There were several people had very high loan to value, meaning like they have the property almost full of loans. Their equity is very low. So let's say if they want to rent out a property or an apartment, we would pay that for them, give them whatever money they want. And then this money, it was prepared from the credit cards or the money that I earned from wholesale. And just before anything, I just received my social security number from the campus because I was an F1 student, international student, meaning that there's no cosigner. I have like nothing on the credit history. Before it used to say it's a very young credit history. So immigrants have to go through. We don't have families or like generous friends who's just gonna put you on the credit card. So that's one. So I didn't have credit. I didn't have stable income, obviously, because I was self-employed, and anything that was income, they were part-time. And then I didn't have any assets. I had that Honda Odyssey minivan 2001. That's the only thing I had. Both of my parents were teachers, so not business at all. I'm just trying to like eliminate all the factors that people can say, oh, I don't have good credit or I don't have money, anything you can dream of, you can do it. That's my message. So basically, we paid them off. We did mortgage assumption, meaning that we assumed their mortgage. We took over their mortgage. The mortgage would still be under the homeowner's name, previous homeowner's name. And then the deed was transferred over to our names. So the property is ours, the mortgage is still theirs. We would religiously pay all the mortgage payments. And when the time is right, when we are ready, we would refinance out and then pay off the existing debt from other person. In a span of 1 year or so, we got to acquire about 6 properties. Once we had 6 properties, that's when the bank took us seriously. And they said, okay, you guys are a landlord and you have certain income on the, rental income. And then we also refinanced. We had cash out refinances. I had like 4 checks at once. It was very happy day of my life.
Amazing.
And I actually went through with the broker, and the broker is like, Susan, that's the beauty of real estate, because cash out refinance is a borrowed money. So it's tax free. So I'm like, oh yeah, that's true. I really enjoyed my first BRRRR, fix and hold cash out refinance. I think we automatically got into like more rehabbing, and then so it was like fix and hold more. We did a couple of fix and flip with some of our partners in the past, but flip is not really our thing. We want to hold on to it and then just increase our rental income and portfolio. And at one point, we acquired a lot of great priced vacant lands. We were doing wholesaling. And a couple of years later, we started realizing that the value of the property were going up. So we had 2 choices: 1, to sell it; 2, to build on it. I said, well, instead of selling it, why don't we just get into this new construction? So did that hard way. It was interesting. The first one, it took so long. And then we did the second one, the third one, we were continuing. So that was very, very fun. And also in the midst of this, I got really well versed with the loan terms and how to get the loans and things like that. We utilize hard money loans very well. We were closing like left and right. And then we were basically doing the BRRRR on steroids. So it really helped us with exponentially growing our portfolio. And we touched on different subjects, different projects. Some didn't go well as planned. Some went very well, more than we expected. And another thing that we did is, I think that was 2017. I was looking at regular rental incomes and I didn't really like it. I mean, we did some Section 8 as well before, and it was okay, but I wanted to see what other options are there, and I got into short-term rental. And short-term rental really transformed my life. The reason is it exposed me to not only hospitality portion of the work, but financials. Biggest thing is the business systemization. So there was just so much work.
Yeah.
And I had to look for the way to not work.
Got it.
So yeah, I did Airbnb and a bunch of different things. So yeah, that's where I'm at now. And I'm just working on more projects, looking into more of lending instead of borrowing. So that's the journey so far.
So first of all, as immigrants, when we're here, if you're new to the country, or even if you're not new to the country, right? Just what Susan said, one of those things that we often don't have is that long credit history. There's a lot of things that potentially could stop someone from building their wealth in a new country, right? A lot of the credit history is crucial when it comes to lending. The second piece is the language barrier and the cultural barrier. The third thing is knowing what's available. But what I really want to point out from Susan's story, right, is that despite all of these challenges, she was determined to overcome them. So if you're listening and you feel like, I come over here and I don't have the credit history, I don't have the experience, I don't even know the language well, I don't know a lot of these sales skills, know that you are fully capable of picking this up, right? You're here in a new country, just the courage it takes for you to completely pick up your life and move to a new country, that already proved that you have the strength and the courage to keep growing in your business. And just understanding that, yes, things are gonna feel challenging at first, which is why we built the community, right? Which is why we have experts like Susan. You can listen to her story and know like, hey, this is what available for you. And the other thing I also want to point out, right? Susan tried a lot of different strategy in real estate. You heard her story about creative financing. Sometimes when you're in a W-2 environment, it's so structured that the way the job is the way the job is. There's not a lot of creative thing you may be able to do. But when you're in real estate, when you're in business, just like what Susan did, even if she didn't have a good credit history or even a long credit history, she was able to leverage the existing mortgage that the homeowner has and be able to actually still help them out in the process while be able to build wealth for herself. Fix and flip, buy and hold, a lot of creative financing, wholesaling, Airbnb. If you're new, ask for help, try some of those strategy. If you already have done some of this, next piece for you to grow is what Susan gonna talk about next, this process and system building. You only have limited amount of time. So in order for you to grow and scale, you have to employ system and process. So Susan, tell us more about your system and process, specifically for, I guess, Airbnb. And I know you mentioned you now have businesses that also have a lot of these system and process. Tell us more about those as well.
I feel like anyone who's getting to real estate, they really need to look into systemizing and automating everything. And we often call real estate income as passive income. But those of you who are in the game, that you already know that it's pretty active, maybe more active than your regular W-2 jobs. I think it depends, but usually once you're done with it, you don't think about it or you bring into Christmas or any holidays or things like that or family time. But with business, if they're calling you 3 a.m., you might have to pick it up, right? So with the Airbnb, the reason why I'm thankful that I got into that industry before is that it was a lot of work. So hospitality portion includes like guest correspondence, making sure that they're happy, responding within like minutes, checking them in. If they broke something, claim for insurance. There's a lot of things like reservations. Then there's a marketing portion, making sure the rooms are selling, the pictures, the furnishing. Once the property is finished, you clean it up, you furnish it, you take pictures, you list it on the market. But it's not just Airbnb platform, right? You list it on booking.com, Expedia, Verbo, all these different places. And then you have to sync them up. It's pretty automated now, but back in 2017, there were not many solutions. They had calendar sync because it's from different platforms. It had to be centralized. Even with the API integration, there was lag in it. So there could be very much of a double booking on popular holidays, right? So a lot of issues back then. And there's also cleaning, making sure everybody's happy in our workplace as well, not just the guests. So there was a lot of things that I had to take care of. So in the beginning, obviously, I was like, what, early 20s and very, excited to work, passionate. So I went to the houses, cleaned myself, shopping, and you'll see some of the people who's doing short-term or mid-term rental or hotels. You go to Walmart, buy like 7 carts of things, and people are like, what the heck? Is she robbing them all?
You went from 5 part-time job to 12 part-time jobs.
Exactly. A funny story real quick. I had a property in Florida and I started ordering everything, right? From Walmart, from Amazon, from IKEA. I ordered everything to the house. I went to the house on the day that was going to be delivered. Nothing was there, no packages. So I said, oh my God, people stole it. This is horrible. And then I realized the post officer was like, that property looked very vacant. So I just didn't deliver it. So I was like, oh, thank God. Like,
Nothing was stolen, especially when you're in Philly.
yeah, because he's like, it's an empty house and there's a bunch of boxes that's getting delivered. And I'm like, oh no, it's because I'm trying to furnish it. So we furnished it, enjoyed Florida. There was a little creek in the back, so we were canoeing and things like this. It was fun, but not something that you would do every year, right? Or every month. So that's when I started. I had somebody who is from Colombia, and he basically had this very good ideas of business. I think he graduated in that major, so that's why he knows. And he ran a couple of successful like startups or companies that he did. So he started feeding me the ideas of delegation and how, you're supposed to have other people work for you. And then I started reading more books. And I got tired, obviously. That's the most, the best motivation, right? And I'm like, I'm getting tired of this thing, but I want to still make money. So I worked with my friend Nico from Colombia, and then we started hiring people. And that's when I found out the beauty of delegating, automating, breaking down into processes, and basically cloning what I would do in multiple people or multiple technologies. So basically, the first thing I did was segmentizing it, breaking down to the studs, right? And then making sure those segments are all there. And then I would find the ones that are repeatable, like repeating workflow. Then I would create the soaps, right? So SOPs. I use ClickUp, but you can use
Mhm.
anything. Google Drive. I tried using Jira,
Mhm.
Trello, everything, Slack, all these things, but I end up going with the ones that just easy to deal with. But the point is, when you're developing
Mhm.
this in the beginning to get yourself out, you would write down the things that you do.
Mm.
So if you don't have any system right now, what you do is you just sit down either on the computer or on a piece of paper. You write down everything that you do. It doesn't have to be in an order. You write down everything that you do. Let's say if you're fixing a home and then you need a good HVAC person, the person who's going to pull the permit, do the duct work, buy the good warranted machine, put it in there, close the permit, and yeah, that's it, right? But how are you going to do it? So you think about, okay, where can I start? Write down property information and reaching out to contractor. How are you going to reach out to contractors, right?
Mhm.
Maybe you can look it up in the local real estate investment association directory, or maybe you ask your investor friend to see if they have some more referrals. So those are breaking down to the
Mhm.
studs of what you would. And then now, how are you going to make calls? Are you writing certain notes? Are you asking certain questions? Not just the price.
Yep.
You got to know what's included in the price, also the timeline, and what happens if they don't stick to the
Mhm.
timeline? How are they going to be responsible for? So you kind of write down all the things that you need. And then the reason being is because you're going to give that job to somebody else. And it doesn't matter how smart the other person is. They can have PhD, they can be super smart, they can be Einstein, right? But the point is, you think that whatever work process that you used to be doing, if you're going to give it to another person to do it, imagine that person is from
Mm.
kindergarten. Imagine that person doesn't know anything about working.
Mhm.
That's how you should create your work process flow. So in the beginning, I started doing that. Then there's some people start working with me at the same
Mhm.
time. There were some people who are like smarter, more proactive. There were some people who are more reactive to things, right? What I did is I asked them to modify the
Mhm.
manuals themselves. So I basically delegated that work
Yeah.
too. So I don't have to do it,
Yeah, I
right?
love that.
And it's actually much better
Mhm.
because they know about the everyday work
Yep.
because I'm not in everyday
Mhm.
operation anymore. So they can go ahead, get it done.
Yep.
So I think there's three phases to
Okay.
this. First phase is that you do everything. You are the business and you run the daily wheel.
Mhm.
The second thing is that once you take yourself out of the daily wheel, you're still doing sales and HR, right? Those are the two things that you do.
Yeah.
And then you continue to hire these people, selling your products and services to other people. Now, on the phase three, when everybody is delegated to those
Mhm.
work, that's when you're finally free. So I really wish people, when they're starting real estate or any type of business that you're trying to do, I want you to create system.
Mm.
You got to be educated about how you're going to buy the property, fix it, finance it, all that stuff. But think about how you're going to be doing that and how you're going to be creating the team to do it.
Mhm.
The first thing that you should do is creating the right team. It doesn't end in like getting the right agent, the contractor, the title company. It doesn't end there. So I think that's the first thing that everybody should do.
Mhm.
And once the operation is somehow developed, that's when you start writing the manuals. Or you can write manuals before then, but manuals and soaps and all these things, it never gets completed.
Great point. Yep.
I need to improve it every day. So there's no completed finalized manual.
Mhm.
There could be manuals and soaps and workflow that takes yourself out,
Mhm.
takes the leader out, but there's no perfect one. So wherever you start, that's good, right?
Awesome.
I integrated a lot of people and then just assumed the system is more important than the people. So what that means is that I would make sure the system is good enough so that the people don't leave.
Interesting.
So whenever I'm hiring anyone, they will review the whole thing, the onboarding process. So another thing is onboarding. If you have a proper onboarding process,
Mhm.
they get less overwhelmed and they feel like they're treated the right way
Yep.
and they stay. Before I had a lot of turnovers. And after I did that, they stayed with us, which
Mm.
was great.
There's a lot of good points that you brought up there, Susan. So essentially, if you're listening and you're like starting out, right, or you now already did something and you're trying to figure out how to scale, the first step, just as Susan said, is to write down every single thing that you think you have done. If you feel already overwhelmed thinking about this, just understand it does not need to be perfect. All of this is going to be a work in progress. That was actually what I got hung up on a lot before too, when I was like, man, I just gotta remember every step. So don't be a perfectionist when it comes to these pieces. Just write all your steps down, right? Understanding that you will have opportunities in the future to perfect it. And then what Susan just said is that for every step, now you have three options. You can choose to delegate, which is put somebody else take over that step. You can automate, which is putting a technology in to take over that step. Or if you found like that step is not important, you can delete it. So in order to remove yourself from that system, right, those are the only three options: delegate, automate, or delete. I had a same experience with the whole hiring and onboarding. Whenever I hire a virtual assistant, I also have them first create an onboarding things, right? When I train them, they then create whatever I just told them. And then the next virtual assistant that come on actually use that onboarding and then improve it after she tried to download software and she's like, wait, this step doesn't work. This needs to be said this way. So that's very important piece. Once you create a system and process, you have somebody else besides you test it. That person now become an expert and they can now actually go ahead and revise that. So it's no longer on you to keep that up. And as you grow and scale, it's crucial. You cannot grow and scale without the system and process in place. What Susan was saying, to create the SOP or a standard operating procedure, this is like a protocol. So imagine it's like your recipe, right? Just like when you cook something, you have that so that people can replicate it. And just like Susan said, doesn't matter how smart the person is, you want to make sure everybody is doing things the way that you do things, right? So that there is the same quality control no matter what you hand it out to. So crucial thing, no matter what you do, real estate, business ownership, entrepreneurship, that is very important thing to do. All right, we have a random question, and this question is something that the previous guest has left behind with a future guest. So your question, Susan, is when you have a setback or a failure, what is your process to kind of gather yourself and then be able to overcome this setback or challenge?
When you face these challenges or setback, what you first do, and I know it's gonna sound funny, you laugh first. You laugh about it. It could be like somebody, slipped and you got sued. IRS is going to audit you. It's something that's very stressful for your business. Anything that stresses you out, first of all, you need to resolve it anyways. Then resolve it in a state where you can think more. Don't get burned out. So one thing I realized is that yes, you might be able to work better if you are like strict about it, punto, like you're doing everything at what it's supposed to be within the time. But that expectation kills you. Mm-hmm. Maybe something good is that you have to have half Asian skills and half Latin. This is just me joking, but there's a lot of Latinos out there that work really well, and there's a lot of Asians that are lazy out there. But I'm just saying, it's just that you just relax about it, just laugh about it. It gives you a little moment for you to enjoy the life that you have. Like, for example, myself, one of the tragedy was my dad died. And then I don't have any money. And I have my mom who doesn't speak English, and she's very weak back then because she just had a surgery. And then my little sister, she's like 8, 9 years old. And I'm like, what am I going to do with her? I had to make money. We just got evicted. We had to get a new house. Like, it was just all that craziness. This is before college. So it was like, what the heck? We came here with Appa, Oma, and they were the adults, right? They were the breadwinners of the family. And now all of a sudden I'm like 18. I'm like, what am I supposed to do? It was a tragedy. We were in despair. If you think about it, if there's anything that is very dreadful, very sad, it looks like that problem is not going to be resolved. You listen to me. Everything is going to be fine. Todo estará bien. Everything's going to be fine. Just think about that, laugh about it, and just resolve it little by little. Just like the process, right? You segmentize it, you do it little by little. It's going to be resolved.
I love that. Yeah. So for any listeners, will it hurt in 10 minutes? Yes. Will it hurt in 10 months? Probably yes. Will it still hurt in 10 years? Maybe probably a bit less by then, right? So what Susan is saying, that at that point, what Susan was going through, like that was a lot. But put things in perspective, right? Everything will be fine in the end. If you have to solve it anyways, why not solve it in a better mood instead of suffer through it, right? So find yourself in a better mood, solve your problem one step at a time, right? Understanding everything's going to look huge, but you're going to break it down one piece at a time, and then everything's going to be fine at the end. I love that. Okay, every podcast, I always want our speaker to share a nonprofit or a cause that they are a champion of and have our listeners support that cause as a thank you for being here today. tell us about a nonprofit or something that we can support on your behalf.
There's actually a lot of nonprofits that I got involved with that I really want to share. But in general, after I automated the whole business stuff, I got bored because, I was in my 20s and my brain was running. So I ended up volunteering at a local chamber of commerce. For me, I'm Korean. So I did the Korean American Chamber of Commerce for Greater Philadelphia. And last 2 years, I served as a president. It's not a paying position. It was more like I pay the money and do different things. And then now I'm involved into, US Korean Chamber of Commerce, which is more of a national level where they have different chapters, different chamber of commerces in major cities like New York or Atlanta, Florida, or Miami or something like that. Mm-hmm. So I would say in general, if you look around yourself, there's specific business alliances and specific chamber of commerce, like business organization, that might be small in size, but they're trying to do something because they are the really only ones that would encourage policymakers and some other spokesperson to be really worried about your local small businesses. And small businesses is how our economy survives, right? So be involved with them, either providing volunteer services, or if you're professional in providing services, you do that. If you want to help with money, you can go ahead and do that. So look around. I myself is involved in this, but there's a lot of chamber of commerces or business alliances that in need of your support.
I love that.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. And with that, tell us, Susan, how people can find out more about you or contact you with any further question.
So you can reach me out on Instagram, Ari_Susan Noh. Honestly, I don't really have too much of social media presence, but yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn as well. Okay. I do have a link where I distribute the form if you want to invest, or if you want to invest with me, or just looking into learning more. I do provide some consulting and some guidance and connecting you to the right people that I've worked with in the past. So I'll share the form with you.
Awesome. Great. We'll put all Susan's contact information in the show note. Thank you so much for being here with us today, Susan. Thank you so much for sharing your journey, sharing your story, and just sharing all the resources you have learned. Greatly appreciate you and looking forward to having you back.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for listening. Bye.